Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, June 20th, 2025. This week, massholes unite for Karen Read, the latest on the assassinations in Minnesota, and Matthew Perry picked some really bad friends. All this and more, stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner on.
That James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter, James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And we're back with more true crime this week with me, your host, James Renner. There's the James Renner bell. Hey, before we get started, CrimeCon 2025 is around the corner. You need to get your tickets. It is happening in September 5th through the 7th in Denver, Colorado. I haven't been to Denver in a long time. It's kind of like the Amsterdam of the United States, if you know what I mean. It's going to be a good time. Denver, CrimeCon, September 5th to 7th. If you're thinking about going, I've got a code for you. It's simply Renner. And if you get it backwards, it still works. RENNER. That's the code that you put into the CrimeCon site for 10% off your tickets. And tell them James Renner sent you. And hope to see you there. I'll be there with lots of books. I'm bringing Scout Camp. I'm bringing Little Crazy Children. You know, whatever flavor you like. As always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for manning the camera. Walter's just back from Canton, Massachusetts, where he spent the night getting hammered with David Yannetti and Alan Jackson. Walter actually tells me that Jackson prefers amaretto sours, which is weirdly on brand. Let's get to the top stories. You know what the top story is this week, but we're going to talk about it anyways. The cheers of the spectators outside the Norfolk County Courthouse could be heard all the way to Ohio yesterday as Karen Read was found not guilty of the murder of John O'Keefe. Read was on trial in Massachusetts, accused of backing her SUV into O'Keefe and leaving him for dead outside the home of fellow Boston cops who were having an after-hours party. The defense, however, claimed that O'Keefe actually went into the house where he got into an altercation with someone inside, as well as the family dog, an altercation that left him severely injured before he was placed outside to make it look like an accident. This was the second trial for Read, and I've never seen anything quite like the obsession that followed it on social media. Not even the Delphi murders reached this level of notoriety. Karen Read fans took to TikTok to cover the smallest details in the case, analyzing facial expressions of witnesses and creating animated simulations of the alleged crime. The story has completely fractured the online true crime community, with podcasters picking sides to support Read or to support the Boston police accused of a cover-up. Take it from me, if you voice your opinion on Facebook, be prepared to offend half your audience. It's never really bothered me. That's fine. You can follow, you can unfollow, but we all have our opinions on this case. Some are based in fact. Some are based in wishes and hopes and dreams. The case also showed the widening rift between traditional media and social media, with many old-school journalists taking pot shots at the armchair sleuths covering the case on TikTok, even though in many cases the coverage by the so-called amateurs was more in-depth than the local newspapers. And now, it's finally over. On Wednesday, the jury found Karen Read not guilty of second-degree murder and also acquitted her of motor vehicle manslaughter while driving under the influence and leaving the scene of a collision, according to NBC News. Karen Read was found guilty of one count, operating under the influence, as she was clearly drinking and driving that night, along with half the Boston Police Department, by the way. Immediately after the verdict, the police officers and friends who were accused by the defense of covering up O'Keefe's murder released their own statement, which read, quote, "Today we mourn with John's family and lament the cruel reality that this prosecution was infected by lies and conspiracy theories spread by Karen Read, her defense team, and some in the media. The result is a devastating miscarriage of justice," end quote. Now, I always get a kick out of these statements that are prepared supposedly by suspects, but were clearly created by someone with training in public relations. Who uses the word lament? Like, how often do you use that word? It's not like you. Anyways, by Thursday, the first juror had given a public interview explaining how they came to realize there was enough reasonable doubt to acquit Karen Reed. Speaking to TMZ, juror number 4 said, quote, "All I know is that there was a lot of holes in the investigation. Whether they were deliberate holes or not deliberate holes, it's kind of hard for me to know that," end quote. Juror 4 went on to say, quote, "We could see from the car after the alleged incident happened, we could see the taillight, it was lit up red, where it shouldn't have just been red. I don't believe the SUV collided with John O'Keefe," end quote. Even though she's now free, Karen Reed could be returning to a courtroom soon. John O'Keefe's family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit in civil court where the legal standard for guilt is much lower than reasonable doubt. O.J. Simpson, as you may remember, was acquitted of murder, but was held liable for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman in civil court. That's how they were able to get him. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the coming months. 57-year-old nutjob Vance Boelter assassinated Minnesota State House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark last Saturday, and then led police on a 2-day manhunt before he was found hiding in the woods a mile from his home. Quote, comma, allegedly. No doubt you've heard about this case by now, but here's a brief timeline of events compiled by Minnesota Public Radio. Boelter's alleged shooting spree began just after 2 a.m. last Saturday. That's when he allegedly knocked on the front door of Democrat State Senator John Hoffman. Boelter banged on the door and shouted, "This is the police." Boelter had dressed up as a police officer with tactical vest and body armor and had disguised his SUV to look like a police vehicle. Now, call me crazy, but maybe you shouldn't be able to buy those things on eBay. I don't see how they could come to any good. He was also wearing a mask that made it look like he was bald. One of those full head masks that they have now that look super realistic and totally creepy. Senator Hoffman and his wife answered the door, but quickly determined Boelter was not a police officer and tried to push him away. That's when Boelter opened fire. Both Hoffman and his wife were shot, but they survived and are still recovering. Boelter then drove to the home of another Democrat, Representative Kristen Bonner. He knocked on her door, but she wasn't home. By this time, police had been alerted to the shootings at the Hoffman residence and had dispatched officers to check on other state representatives. A very smart move. One officer went to check on Democrat Senator Ann Rest. That officer saw Boelter's SUV, but thought it was another real officer. Boelter was sitting behind the wheel. She pulled up beside Boelter's car, rolled down her window to speak with him, but he only stared forward. She then proceeded to Senator Rest's home, and Boelter fled the scene. Officers then went to check on Speaker Melissa Hortman's house. Boelter's SUV was parked nearby, and an officer noted that the license plate appeared to be fake. They saw Boelter at the door. This is how close they got. But they could not get to him before he shot and killed Hortman, her husband, and their dog. Boelter then fled the scene, ditching his uniform and mask. That's when the largest manhunt in Minnesota state history officially began. Boelter managed to avoid capture until 9 p.m. the following night when he was found in the woods. He surrendered without a fight. Inside Boelter's vehicle, police found a hit list which included the names of 45 more elected Democrats. In the hours following his identification and arrest, conspiracy theories grew online, suggesting that Boelter was a liberal whack job since Democratic Governor Tim Walz had appointed him to the governor's Workforce Development Board. But, as it turns out, Boelter is actually an evangelical conservative, like many spree shooters, with easy access to guns in the United States. According to the Associated Press, Boelter had attended Trump rallies and was a registered Republican. Boelter is married and has 5 kids. Yesterday, the media obtained several text messages that Boelter had sent to his family on Saturday. Here's one, quote, "Dad went to war last night. I don't want to say more because I don't want to implicate anybody," end quote. And you just know he probably sent that along with a gif of Michael Scott looking unamused. That's what boomers do, I think. That's typically, yeah. Boelter has since been charged with, let me see here, all of the crimes, and is very likely to be sentenced to death after he has his day in court. 27-year-old Zaria Carr, a social media influencer from Georgia, known as Duchess Dior online, was stabbed to death in her home last Saturday night, according to the New York Post. Around 6 p.m. last Saturday, Duchess Dior shared her last post, which read, quote, "I really don't know what to do, but I need help before I lose my life or freedom. My kids need me," end quote. Which blows my mind. Posting to Facebook instead of calling the police, but that's what she did. At 9:30 that night, police in Twin City responded to a domestic disturbance at the house the Duchess shared with her husband, Shamarcus. That's when they found her body, and Shamarcus's car was gone. Shamarcus was also very popular online. He often streamed moments from their life. In one recent post, he streamed a video of a fight between him and his wife, during which he said, quote, "I swear you'll die," end quote. In another video, Shamarcus is seen shouting at Duchess Dior, saying, quote, "This is the type of bitch that gets beat, long story short," end quote. He then grabs a knife and tells her to leave. Lots of red flags, lots of warning signs. Duchess Dior then says, quote, "What, you about to stab me?" end quote, to which Shamarcus replies, "If I get off this live, you ain't going to make it out the door." So, no great mystery here, and there will be no arrest or any sort of drawn-out court proceedings either, because police caught up with Shamarcus 80 miles away just before 11 p.m. When sheriff deputies attempted to stop him, Shamarcus turned a gun on himself and died by suicide. On the list of things we should uninvent, the atomic bomb is definitely at the top of that list, but I think social media is a close second. And you'll see social media throughout this show today. It just keeps popping up in all these stories. Let's turn off the phones. Go relax. Go on vacation or something, but leave your phones behind. Easier said than done, I know. Anyways, I've got lots more to come. We got to talk about the Matthew Perry case again. Updates in cold cases. I've got some weird news for you. Lots more to come after the break. I'll be back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with more True Crime This Week, brought to you by Kodak. You press the button, we do the rest. Another doctor who's charged with giving ketamine to actor Matthew Perry before his death has agreed to plead guilty just this week, according to PBS. Dr. Salvador Plasencia will make a deal and plead guilty to 4 counts of distribution of ketamine and will cooperate with prosecutors. The plea carries a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison. Now, there really was no other choice for Dr. Palencia. Prosecutors had obtained several text messages between Dr. Palencia and another doctor in which he called Perry a moron. He also texted, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay," end quote. So they had him pretty good. Dr. Palencia visited Perry's home and injected the actor himself, and then showed Perry's assistant how to administer more doses. Perry was using ketamine to self-medicate his depression. He was found dead on October 28th, 2023, after taking a heroic dose of the drug and slipping underwater in his hot tub. In July 2022, 7 people robbed an armored truck in Los Angeles and made away with 73 bags of gold, emeralds, rubies, and luxury watches worth an estimated $100 million. This week, federal authorities announced the arrest of 2 of the suspects, according to the Associated Press. Pablo Raul Lugo LaRoche and Jason Nealon, Priscilla Flores, I'm trying hard, guys, were arrested Monday and were promptly charged with federal theft and conspiracy. The feds say a third suspect is already serving time in an Arizona prison on an unrelated burglary. The other 4 remain at large. Federal prosecutors, all sporting brand new Rolex watches, say that only some of the loot has been recovered so far. Last month, police in Saitama City, Japan, arrested 31-year-old Jun Sato on suspicion of stealing a woman's smartphone as he passed her on the sidewalk. When police searched his house, they found 2 skulls and several bones stored on a shelf, and they were like, we should probably look into this too. Well, Sato was rearrested on Monday of this week, and DNA testing confirmed that one of the skulls belonged to Keiho Miyamoto, a 21-year-old woman who went missing in 2018, according to Japan Today. Police say Saito had already admitted to strangling Miyamoto. He allegedly told them, quote, "I've had murderous desires since I was a child. I wanted to kill someone. I'm sure I did it with her consent," end quote. Bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. I'm thinking not. When asked about the second skull, Saito told them he'd purchased it online. In related news, there's a screaming deal on Temu right now where if you buy 2 skulls, you get a random Dragon Ball Z character. It's oolong. That's who you get. When a detective goes missing, the first suspects are generally the creeps they help put away, but this case is a bit stranger. 73-year-old Mary Narangelo was a retired police detective from Glastonbury, Connecticut. Since her retirement, Mary had kept pet birds, which she showed off on social media. She was also a self-declared Wiccan. She was last seen in June of 2024, according to ABC News. Last July, a friend asked police to do a welfare check because they hadn't heard from her in a couple weeks, but police were unable to locate her at the time. Instead, when they arrived at her house, they found one of the worst hoarding situations they had ever seen, with trash piled 6 feet high in places and no paths to walk from one room to the other. They also found several dead birds in cages throughout the home. 7 months after her disappearance, police used a bulldozer to remove some of the trash, and buried underneath was a skeleton. This week, police finally confirmed that that skeleton was, in fact, Mary Narangelo. No joke here, just a reminder to check on your crazy relatives as often as you can. Let's jump over to the weird news, shall we? Now, normally, people break out of prison, but one 19-year-old urban explorer broke into the old Downstate Correctional Facility in Fishkill, New York last Saturday to get some sweet pictures of an abandoned property to share on social media, according to the Miami Herald. The unnamed man apparently slipped through a hole in the fence and then entered the building. Unfortunately, he then accidentally locked himself inside a jail cell. He was forced to call police for help. They found him just after midnight, and they were kind enough to help him out again, and then they sent him on his way with one charge of third-degree criminal trespassing. Going to jail for breaking into a jail is so meta. Over to pop culture. The new 3-part true crime docuseries, The Mortician, has become HBO's most watched documentary in 5 years, according to Deadline.com. The series premiered June 1st and chronicles the inhumane practices inside a funeral home in Southern California. Apparently, the owners of Lamb Funeral Home in Pasadena discovered several clever ways to steal from the dead and their loved ones, including mass cremations. Now, I haven't watched this yet, but must be really good. People are jumping on it. Let me know what you think. The true crime book of the week this week is Submersed: Wonder, Obsession, and Murder in the World of Amateur Submarines by Matthew Gavin Frank. And yes, it's about what you think it's about. Submersed begins with an investigation into the beguiling subculture of DIY submersible obsessives, men and women, but mostly men, who are so compelled to sink into the deep sea that they become amateur backyard submarine builders. Should they succeed in fashioning a craft in their garage or driveway and set sail, they do so at great personal risk, as the 2023 fatal implosion of Stockton Rush's much more highly funded submarine Titan proved to the world. Matthew Gavin Frank explores the origins of the human compulsion to sink to depth, from the diving bells of Aristotle and Alexander the Great to Confederate H.L. Hunley, which became the first submersible to sink an enemy warship before itself being sunk during the Civil War. The deeper he plunges, however, the more obsession seems to dovetail and more threatening traits. Following the grisly murder of journalist Kim Wall at the hands of eccentric entrepreneur Peter Madsen aboard his DIY midget submarine, Frank finds himself reckoning with obsession's darkest extremes. Weaving together elements of true crime, the strange history of the submarine, the mythology of the deep sea, and the physical and mental side effects of sinking to great depth, Frank attempts to get to the bottom of this niche compulsion to chase the extreme in our planet's bodies of water and in our own bodies. What he comes to discover and interrogate are the odd and unexpected overlaps between the unquenchable human desire to descend into deep water and a penchant for unspeakable violence. That's wacky. Very timely, very niche. So, but, I don't think I can read it. I know some of you will be a fan of that. It would cause too much anxiety. But again, I'm still the one on TikTok, at midnight scrolling through and all those deep dive cave videos. I can't get enough of them apparently. And I have watched the Titan documentaries, so maybe I'll have to pick it up. Anyways, that's it. That's the show for this week. I am off next week. I'm on vacation. I'm gonna relax with some. I don't know, margaritas is the way to go. A little salt rim. Anyways, I will be back in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, try to stay out of trouble. And remember the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, who tells us we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.